Hey everybody, thanks for being here today in this very unusual Tableau user group going virtual. My name is Megan Putney and really excited to have you all here, and please bear with us. This is our very first virtual Tableau user group. So we're learning just as much as you guys are. Our agenda for today, we're going to go over data alerts and how to use those in Tableau Server. Scott's going to walk us through how to deal with fuzzy dates. And then this is a short meeting. We really just wanted to continue the communication here with you guys and keep the community together. And we'll have some small group breakouts where you guys can discuss, anything that you're dealing with or any wins that you've had, and that will be the remainder of the session. So just a quick introduction for any of you who are new. This is our TUG leadership group here. So my name is Megan Putney, like I said. We have Marty Moss here on the phone. Scott Taylor, and then the remainder of our user group I think isn't here today, but I'm sure you will see them and definitely reach out to them if you have questions. You can reach out to any of us here. We have Casey Buttle, Tyler Buttle, and Michael Merritt. And we can just start with the mandatory antitrust slide. So obviously don't discuss price or anything like that. We're not trying to do any of that. We're just trying to learn Tableau here and understand how people are using the software to the best of their abilities. Also, a quick reminder, if you do have any questions as we're going through this information, Marty will be monitoring the chat, so please put any questions you have in the chat. You guys are all muted, so just if you have a question, put it in the chat and we will get to it. Just wanted to have a quick reminder, obviously the new normal, why we are all here looking at our rectangles of everyone. Tableau actually has a really great database of all the COVID information that is updated on a daily basis. And I have the link there. Again, we'll be sending out this PowerPoint afterwards. So if you wanted to check that out, you definitely can. So starting with data alerts in Tableau Server, this is something that I had been meaning to look into. So we just got Tableau Online for the first time. So all of this stuff is brand new to me, so I had to really dig into it. What I noticed as I was learning it was some of the benefits, right? This Tableau alerts are really meant for that high level, we want to hit this one number and then you can send it out to your VP or something like that. That's really great for alerts. Also, it can immediately send that email to them, and then they can click through to the data, which again encourages users to really dig into the data. You can see it in your email as a reminder, and then they can go in further. And then obviously the data is always current and up to date as you refresh it for your users, which is another great benefit. The limitations, so for us, we have Tableau Online. We do not have an enterprise-wide license. So I realized that you can only send email to users who also have your Tableau server. So for me, it's maybe not as effective as I would have liked. You can also only create alerts based on one specific metric. So you actually have to create a chart and then you can only have one specific metric. So you can't do multiple states or multiple regions. You would have to create different dashboards for each one of those. And then creating it on a week-by-week basis really isn't intuitive, like a lot of the other tools in Tableau. So that was another limitation I saw. And this is what the alert looks like. So it comes from the noreply@tableau.com, and it basically just shows a quick outline of your dashboard or of that sheet that you wanted to show. So with that, I will walk through it with you guys live. Are there any questions so far, Marty? Just give me a thumbs up if we're good.
We're all good.
Okay, awesome. So looking at Tableau Online, I believe server looks pretty similar. And if we just edit this, again, all of this stuff is superstore data, so don't worry about any of this being specific. It's all the Tableau data. I changed a few aliases just for the sake of the example. So right now we're just going to build out a quick profitability over time. So if I bring in profit, and are you guys good? You can see my screen, Scott, and okay, awesome. Okay, so the profitability over, and then I grabbed week. So we can look at the ship date, and I'm going to right click and drag it into the columns. So then I can actually choose week here. Now I can see my weeks over time and my profitability. And then I just want to bring in, we look at that. We can't actually, like I said, alerts, you cannot bring in more than one thing at a time. So we can just create it into a line chart utilizing the show me here. So now you can see where we dipped under, we were not profitable on these specific weeks. Then I just created a state map. And here we can, probably a best practice here to label. So weekly profit, and I misspelled it. Another thing I noticed about Tableau Server that's a little bit not ideal is you actually can't create filters across multiple groups easily. You actually have to create that filter on each group. So let's pull in state. And again, we're gonna pull in profitability. So we're just gonna pull in profit. Hypothetically, this is my data, I would probably do profitability as a calculation. I guess you could do profit ratio, but just for example purposes. And then I'm gonna hold down the control key and drag it onto label. And now we can see it's by color as well as the label. Perfect. So we'll call that map. And then we can create a detailed item table here. So if we go to product, and then we can drag in profit, drag in profit ratio. And then again, I can hold down control, bring it to color, change that to square. Now it's color coded by the profit. And the benefit is here, they've already created that custom hierarchy for us. So you can easily uncreate the hierarchy or recreate the hierarchy just by dragging something in, right? So I could bring in region to this product hierarchy and it would start at region. Hypothetically, but so for this sake, we can just, now we can drill down into the different categories and subcategories all the way down to item. So we'll call that product. And again, we're just going to drag all of this together: weekly profit, map, product, and I'm actually going to do, we'll go like that. All right, and then I'm just going to close this out. And there we have a more or less what we're trying to look for. So for this example, I just took a look at profit and I right clicked. Well, so, and then you're probably wondering, like I was, where are alerts? I don't understand. I need to find alerts. It's nowhere on here. You actually have to save your dashboard and you have to create alerts from the other view. So I'm just going to save it. You go back to the home and refresh. Oops. All right. I'm just going to go back to this one. So it would be somewhere within your recents. And if you give it a moment. Oh, and I also created, you can just drag in a text box. So for this one, I just did the example, and hypothetically, you could put in a salesperson and then have the salesperson as your filter. And then you would automatically send this dashboard to that salesperson. So for this, we're going to write, you have to click on an axis. Oops, sorry. You have to go to alerts at the top right here. You can say create. Now you click on the axis. Okay, there it goes. Okay, so then you can create your condition, whether you want that to be above or below. For this one, I just said we can do below or equal to 0. And then you can actually change the subject line that's going to be sent out in that email, right? So for this one, I just made it the title of the dashboard. And then your recipients, like I said, these have to be people who have access to your server. So for us, we don't have an enterprise-wide license. I can only choose emails of people who have the server. And here you can also choose whether you want to do it weekly or hourly or daily or just the one time when you create it. And then you just create your alert. And if it wasn't lagging, there you go. It's that easy. So then it shows your alert and then it will send that email that looks like this. That is alerts in less than 10 minutes. And I also did include these additional resources. So this is, after much Googling and searching on the internet, these are the resources that I found the most helpful. And also for me, I think I'm also going to look into set actions. So if you're in just normal Tableau desktop, you can create an action that will send an email instead of having to do the alerts, which I think is probably the method I'm going to use. The other option here, right, there's always a workaround. If you don't have a company-wide server license, you could always send the alert to yourself and then have it auto email. They won't be able to like click into it, but it could give them like an overview of, you know, the dashboard, especially if you make just like your main measures very large. So it says, hey, sales are up this much, you know, volumes down, whatever. And that could be helpful for your team. So how you do that is just in Outlook. You can also look up how to auto email in Outlook, essentially rules and alerts. You do a new rule, you apply that rule on the messages that you receive. Click next, and I just did from people or public group and then with specified words. And I just made that no-reply@tableau.com, which is where those data alerts come from. And then just make sure whatever subject you've decided on. Here I made sure it always had data alert on it. So anything that comes into my email box with no reply that comes in from Tableau and has the subject data alert, then it'll be forwarded to whoever you want to forward it to. I will open it up to questions if we've gotten any questions.
So far, you must have done an excellent job because no one's typed in a question, but we'll see if someone has a question they want to share over audio.
Okay. Yeah, we'll open up. Anyone have any questions?
That just shows you how awesome you are.
All right, I'd like to believe that, but all right, let's. Now we're going to move on to looking at fuzzy dates with Scott Taylor. So a lot of you guys use the fuzzy dates. For those of you who do work with Walmart or with CPG, fuzzy dates just refer to essentially like a last or most recent week time frame that moves along with what you have. Whenever I am working with someone who's not with Walmart, I say fuzzy dates and they think it's very odd. So like rolling dates for those of you who are not Walmartians.
Right. Okay, so let me share my screen here. Find the right window. Okay, we're going to use Sample Superstore. Can you see my screen? Yes? Okay, good. So like Megan was saying, last 4 weeks, last 13 weeks, last 52 weeks, some common fuzzy dates that we tend to work with in retail business and probably other places too. Your data source is typically always changing in daily, weekly, monthly. You're getting new data, which adds new weeks or dates to your data. So being able to have an automated way to work with those time frames can be very handy. So within this sample superstore data source, we have a couple of dates to work with. Let's just use the ship date and take a peek at it. So if we look at the ship date, we can see that this is a daily date. And to make it easy for me working with weekly buckets, I'm just going to create a calculation that converts this to weeks. So let's create a calculated field, and I will call this ship date for week of. And using the Tableau functions, we have a function. My mind is going blank now that I'm getting ready to work with it. Date trunc, which allows you, if you look at the help over here, to enter a bucket of time that you're interested in truncating the date to, and then a date, and it will handle that for you. So in this case, I know I want to work with weeks. So for the first parameter or argument, I'm going to put in week. And then I know that I'm working with the ship date, so I'll enter the ship date in there. So if I say OK, and let's go ahead and do some default formatting on that. So default properties, date format, I'll just pick that one. And if we drag this in and drop it, we can see that we now have weekly buckets. And it defaults to Sunday. There was a parameter in there where you could specify the date of the week that you want for your weekly bucket. And you can see, like in this week, we have ship dates on the 15th, 18th, and 19th, but Sunday is the 14th, so it gives us that date. So now that I have the weekly dates to work with, there's a couple of ways that I like to work with fuzzy dates. The first one is just kind of down and dirty and easy, and it's using built-in Tableau functionality called sets. So let's just do a set of the ship dates. So we'll create a set of these, and I'll just call the set of ship dates for week of. And of course, there's all types of options here when we're creating a set. In this case, I'm going to use the top because I'm going to define this as criteria. Top number, this is where we could enter our 4 or 13 or 52 or whatever for this particular set. But we also have the ability to create a parameter, and it'll kind of do this on the fly for you. You could create one manually, and you can control how the user enters information. I'm just going to let them enter all. So now we'll have the flexibility to actually change the number of weeks that we want to look at. So I'll say OK there. And then by the field, we're working with the ship dates. So we want to pick that ship date week of. And we want to work with, it requires it be aggregated when we're looking for the top number of them. So I'm just going to pick maximum. So now that I have that set, if we drag it off on color here, just to kind of take a peek at it and see how it's working, let's edit these colors. So if you're in that set of weeks, we'll make it orange. And if you're outside of the set, let's make it blue. So you can see here the 10 dates, and you can see 10 rows when you grab a hold of it and look at it, because we had that set as our default. If I show this parameter that was created, if we were to change that to 4, it'll show us the 4 weeks, or 26, or whatever we want to work with. So that can be handy. We could actually throw this up on the filters and choose just the dates that are in. And then if we were looking at sales or quantity or what have you, let's just throw a quick total in there. Now when I look at my last 13 weeks or my last 4 weeks or whatever, I can see it week by week and I can see the total. So that's an easy way to work with sets. So let me just name this sheet sets of dates. Now oftentimes what I'll need to do is I'll need to know the last date that I have in the data to work with when I'm basing these fuzzy time periods off of it. It's handy to be able to show the user that. So one of the easiest ways for me to get to that is just to create a calculated field. where I figure out what that is. So we'll call this the latest ship date for week of. And using the squiggly brackets to make it a level of detail, I'll just take the max of the ship date for the week of and go out here and close my squiggly bracket. And I'll get the aggregate of just this one date. So let me put the dates back in on this new tab. And go down to the bottom, 1/5/20. Let me apply some default formatting to this. Date format, let's pick this one. Okay, so now latest date, just drop that out there, pick discrete, and you can see 1/5/20. So that's very handy. I can use this date, I can throw it on the detail card, on my marks card, and I can actually edit my title here to say something like data through week ending, and then put that field in my title there. And now the user knows that they're looking at data through week ending 1/5/20. So when I'm working with the calculations, I find it very useful to go ahead and create Booleans for the time buckets that I'm working with. I can use them in several different calculations or filters or wherever I need them. So in order to do that, let's create another calculated field. We'll just call this one last 4 weeks. And basically, we're going to use another built-in Tableau calculation here called date diff. And if we look at the help for this, it's basically telling us what kind of bucket are you interested in looking at for the date diff, and then it compares the two dates and gives you a result. In this case, again, I know I'm going to be working with week, and I know that I want to compare my latest week that I just calculated with the week that is in the data itself, so the ship date. So that would give me that numeric value, and then I can go greater than -4, and I'll end up with a true false for the last 4 weeks. So if we just drop that onto the color, we can kind of see how that works down there. We can see those 4 weeks are true and the rest of it is false. So let's create a couple more of these real quick. I'll just duplicate this and duplicate it again. We'll go in and edit this one, and we'll make this one for the last 13 weeks. And come down here and say greater than or equal to -13. And then I'll edit this one. Let's do this one for last 52. And down here, last 52. Okay, so now that I have these Booleans, it's pretty easy for me to go ahead and create some discrete bucketed time measures, measures based on these time buckets. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll create a calculated field and we'll call this sales last 4 weeks. And basically I'll just use the old if here. If last 4 weeks, then I want to see sales, and if not, I want it to be a 0. And then I'll do the same thing for 13 and 52. So sales last 13 weeks. And if last 13 weeks, sales or 0. And then the final one, create a calculated field, sales last 52 weeks. And if last 52 sales or nothing. Okay, so now that I have that, if I get rid of this, and I don't really care about that on the color anymore, let's put something in here like maybe category. Yeah, oops, throw category out there. And now if we put our 4, 13, and 52-week cells and change this to be on the label, ta-da, there we go. So we'll name this one fuzzy date calcs. And it's just that easy. So do we have any questions?
I have a question, Scott. So if you wanted to look at last year data, would you be able to just add 52 to that if you had the enough data in the background?
Well, let's go ahead and do that. That's a good question. Actually handle last year a little differently with the Boolean. It takes just a little more logic. Where this is the end of the data, it's easy to just look at that greater than or equal to -4. But if I were working with last week in this same, or last year in this same type of setup, the first place I would start probably is to create that latest date for last year. So we'll call this latest ship date year ago week of. And what we'll do is there's actually a handy function in here called date add. And as you can see, you can add, you can pick what you're adding, a numeric value, and then the date that you're adding it to. So in this case, I know that I want to do a year, and I want to take one away, and I'm taking one away from the latest ship date this year. So that will give me the last year date. So if I format that, default properties, and pull that out here somewhere where we can look at it just to get the idea of, okay, 1/5 of 2019, 1/5 of 2020. You can see that that's working. So we have last year's date now. To create those Booleans, let's start with maybe the last 4 weeks for a year ago. So last 4 weeks. Here we go. It's actually just a slight bit more complicated, but nothing too terrible. So the way that I typically do it is I will say, and I actually have it down here because I'm getting old and I get confused easily, especially when I'm presenting. So let's just go ahead and paste that in and talk about it. I've probably named some things differently, so I'll have to change a couple of these. Wow, that's big. There we go.
You can put them on new lines too, if you need to.
Yeah. Oops. Okay, so yes, ship dates for week of. And Tableau is case sensitive to a fault, by the way. So you can see that here I have a capital O and down there I have a lowercase o. So, and maybe something else different, but I'll just go ahead and swap those in. Ship dates for week of and ship dates for week of. So in this case, what I do is I ask Tableau if the ship date for the week of in the row of the data is greater than the year ago date -4. So I figure out where it needed to start year ago. And the ship date is less than or equal to the actual ending week year ago. So that time fences it into that year ago bucket, because if I just did like I had up here, Let's go ahead and save this. Say okay. If I just did like I had up here, where I do the -4, I'll actually get through all of the current year because it'll be -4, -5, -6. It'll just keep growing. And you can kind of see that. We can put the dates in and actually look at what happens. So if I drag in my ship dates for the week of, and I'll look at this, I'll end up with my trues down here for the last 4 weeks where I expect them. If I were to duplicate this and edit this one, and we'll call this wrong, wrong year ago. If I were to just change this one date here to the year ago version, and of course my syntax is going to kill me. What I end up with is it figures out the starting point, but it doesn't know where to end it because the data doesn't end. So it just keeps going. So that's why you have to use this little bit of extra logic and figure out, you have to time fence it between 4 weeks prior and where it actually ends. Does that make sense? So then if we pull that in there, we'll see that it should just give us the year ago trues. Yep, there they are. And then it ends. Make sense?
Yeah, that was really helpful. And then just for, I feel like one of the questions that I have, and totally okay if you don't have a preference or an answer, what is the benefit of doing the week groupings this way versus doing something in Tableau Prep or having like a reference table? Is there a preference, or is there, yeah, do you prefer one way over the other?
It just depends on the data source that you're working with. Oftentimes we have a period master or a calendar that we'll join to when we're building the Tableau data source itself for users to work with. And it will have a lot of date aggregations built in. There will be a calendar folder here, and you can just pull out or use as as a row or a column or a filter the bucket that you're interested in. That is my absolute preferred way to do it because you have the best control over, especially when you're dealing with like 445 calendars or retail calendars, because different retailers have different calendars. But if you're just working with some down and dirty data and you needed to develop some calculations, like I did this quite a bit originally with our Nielsen data source when I first started working with Nielsen as a Tableau data source. I built out a lot of these predefined calculations and put them in a folder where users could just go grab either the date that they were interested in using for filters, or they could drill down into folders down here for the measures and be able to just quickly pull the measure last 4 weeks, last 4 weeks year ago, last 4 weeks difference, last 4 weeks percent change, that type of stuff. So yeah, it depends on how you're building your data source and the what you're trying to present. Certainly all of these calculations have a performance hit, whereas blending to a calendar when you're building your data source would lessen the impact of that performance hit.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Scott. That was super helpful.
Sure.
And I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, but this is the time we were going to break you out into rooms. I will go ahead and share. I will go ahead and share my screen. So we have a few thought starters. Basically, we just wanted to have this meeting. I know it's a shorter meeting. Obviously, the format's very different, but we just wanted to be able to connect you guys and have, if you guys have questions or if you have best practices that you want to share. So just a few thought starters. Have you guys learned anything cool this past, during your time in quarantine and COVID? Have you learned anything? any new tips, any best practices? Have you implemented, Tableau with new users on your team? Any of that information, or even any questions you guys have, if you want to learn from each other, that would be great. Do we want to, it looks like we have enough people just to stay in this room if we want to do that. So
Yeah.
Alyssa, I think we're actually okay on breaking out rooms.
Okay.
So we'll open it up to questions. Anybody have any questions, any comments, anything fun you've learned recently? I will stop sharing my screen.
Anything you'd like to know how to do?
Anything you've been struggling with? I know actually the week piece is something I definitely struggled with when I was first learning Tableau. So I know that would have been helpful for me a couple of years ago.
So, hey guys, this is Stephanie. I'm sorry, my camera doesn't allow me to share for some reason from this computer, so I apologize, but thank you so much for the information. So I'm somebody who has very recently just kind of had to delve into a lot of the replenishment role on my team. And so, but I'm not a very expert or experienced user with Tableau. So I would like to know tips and tricks as far as somebody who is, I would say, above average, but still amateur, especially compared to y'all. How does somebody like me get started with Tableau? What are the differences and the benefits between Tableau and Power BI? And also, how can I apply this to my current role in replenishment?
Yeah, so I think I can take that question on unless other people want to jump in. Tableau has a ton of really great resources on their site. And then I personally learned from a site called udemy.com. And the instructor's name is Kirill Eremenko. And he's awesome. The Udemy site, they do pretty good deals pretty often. So I felt like that course, it's an 8-hour course, I think. So if you break it up, do a couple hours a day, you can be Tableau proficient in a week or less.
Can you put in the chat a link or that name too?
Yes, I'll put it in the chat. Yep.
Thanks.
And does anyone else have a comment? And then I will take your second part of your question about Power BI. I'll open it up though if anyone else had best practices as far as how they learn Tableau.
I started by going through all of the instructional material that Tableau had on their website, and then I branched off onto YouTube videos, and there's a lot of great blogs and Zen masters out there that have terrific information, and basically I'm pretty much self-taught. And I went to a couple of Tableau user groups, one in Austin and one in New Orleans. So that's very helpful too.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott.
Look at that. You beat me. I did the same thing. It looks like they're having a sale on that course, which they regularly do. So right now it's $16.99. We don't get any commission, so.
I can ask around too. Kirill, actually, I was in contact with him and he actually made it I think last time he made it like $5 or something crazy for just us in the Tableau user group, but I can maybe reach out to him again and see if we can get it.
Sure. That'd be awesome. Yeah, I'm always been trying to take a lot of classes and stuff during COVID. So most of this time for me has been spent on just sharpening my Excel skills.
Yeah. This year, Tableau's conference, they typically, like the two that I talked about going to, they typically have a big blowout conference every year that's very exciting. It's like a rock star concert for data people. This year it's going to be online with COVID, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But even when it was in an exotic city somewhere, if you couldn't go, they typically have ways for you to follow what's going on at the events with their YouTube channel and live streaming stuff on their Tableau site. So
yeah, and actually a lot of the stuff
out.
that I presented today when I was Googling, I found some old presentations from Tableau conferences. So they actually have all of the historical stuff from Tableau conferences available.
Yeah, I heard this morning they're doing Burning Man on on Zoom too. So it'll be interesting to see how these massive conferences are working it out. And on that note, I appreciate you guys doing this video conference for us too, because it's important to keep learning. And so it's nice to, see your face and get connected and learn new things. So thank you.
Yeah. So the Power BI question.
I bet you get that a lot, right?
Yeah, so yes, we do get it a lot, and in fact, so my analyst, he's actually on the call here, Joe DeFalco. He actually came up with a handy guide that shows you all of the differences between Power BI, Tableau, and ClickSense, which is our IT team's preferred go-to. So he's actually created an entire overview, all of the questions you could possibly ask, the pricing, everything, as well as just the pros and cons of each one. So obviously, Tableau is the clear winner here. No cons of Tableau. Maybe just the price or the adoption. It would be the only con. But from what I've heard from people, Tableau is much more intuitive to use. And in general, Power BI, just like my friend, Ernesto, some of you might have met him. He had a book on Power BI just to try to learn it, which is crazy and not something you really need to do with Tableau. And then ClickView, I've seen it, and just to change the color to red and green, you need to know code, which seems a bit intense for my liking. Yeah, Joe, if you wanted to chime in, any comments? Oh, I think you're on mute, the double mute.
All right, I think I figured it out. You guys can hear me now?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So I actually built this little presentation a couple months ago, so it's not completely fresh in my mind. But as far as like individual user, I guess customization, Tableau is just obviously the clear winner. Both of the other platforms, they do involve more touch points with somebody that's more skilled in like an IT sense. So when I was doing my research on this, Tableau is just, again, the much more individual user-friendly platform. Like it was something that anybody essentially could jump into and maybe not understand its total capability, but it's easier to learn, and it does provide better visualizations. So for that individual user, it's definitely the preferred platform.
And I think another huge benefit of Tableau is just the fact that it does have such a community around it. That's one thing. I don't know how many of you use Alteryx. Apparently our Alteryx user group here in Northwest Arkansas is defunct. I do not want to start it. So if someone else wants to start an Alteryx user group, that would be awesome. But I do think that's a unique aspect of Tableau. It's just the amount of users. And if you ask a question on the site, someone will answer you. So I've done that a few times as well.
Hey, can you go back to the cost slide, Megan? Sorry, I know you just stopped sharing.
Sure.
So I guess as an individual, so like, if my company doesn't pay for Tableau, I think that's where I would probably just ask you guys, what do you think the benefit of, self-investment on this? Is this something that is worth it for an individual to use to wow my boss with graphics of data, or, what's your take on that?
So I know Ernesto paid for it himself because I know his company went to Power BI and he just ended up doing a month-to-month on Tableau. And that's more of the subscription model is more of what Tableau is moving towards versus buying like a license for a full year or buying it forever. So I'm not sure if I would invest in it. I don't know. It would be hard paying $800 or however much it is a year out of pocket.
So one thing, depending on how sensitive your data is for things, there is a Tableau Public available. So if you're okay with sharing your data, you can get access to Tableau with the kind of the caveat that you have to share what you do with the Tableau community. So if it's sensitive information, that may not be a good route, but if it's things that you can mask some of your data before you start working with it, that might be a good way to do it.
The other thing I recommend too, so I think the best of both worlds would just be do the month free trial and prove out your data source, because I think companies, once they see the value in what you're doing, then they will invest. Obviously, if it's going to move your business forward, I think it's a business cost that's acceptable and definitely worth it. So do that free month trial, really get at it and get it all done, and have a basic dashboard to show them. And I think that would have your boss buy into the product.
I'm sure just like many companies, right? Other companies, COVID has prevented us from or even modest budget spending. And my boss is really, really into investing in her employees. And so, she's never hesitated to buy resources for myself and my coworkers. But, I would want to ensure I was adding value to the company and making sure that it wasn't a waste, and that I would know how to use it, and that I could apply it in on a monthly basis to make it worthwhile. That's all good answers, so thank you guys.
And it looks like Fred also jumped in. Another con about Power BI is looking at the ODBC and JDBC connectors. They're not as mature as in Tableau, so linking to your actual SQL database. Any other comments in general? Anything cool? Someone learned something cool this past month?
I'll say the two coolest things I've learned is I post in their data set about COVID. So if people want to have a data set they could play around with, I know you can get it at the Tableau website, but you may want to blend it with some of your data, or just, it may be different than what's available there. That's one thing. And then there's a place online called Placer AI. And that has store traffic information about different retailers and different, whether it's restaurants, whether it's retail, whether it's certain brands. They give you small slices of data for free to whet your appetite, but that's been something that I've been mapping out a lot with Tableau.
Yeah, one of the cool things I like to do with, not in my spare time, right, looking at data, but you can look at the Tableau data set and you can actually find out COVID cases per capita. And actually, Missouri is doing much worse than Dallas, Texas, in case you were wondering. So Missouri's right across the border. We got to watch out, guys.
So for lack of questions, I have a question for you, Megan. So you're fairly new, I think, to Tableau Online, right? So you were doing like a web edit version there when you were demoing for us. Have you tried connecting your desktop application to your Tableau Online server?
So I haven't quite figured it out. So I know how to take my desktop and then put it up into the server cloud and then bring it back down. But I feel like in general, the online does have some limitations. Just the functionality is not
the web
quite,
editing is not there, yeah.
Yeah, not quite as good as desktop. So typically I've just been working mostly in desktops. The only thing I was really excited about for online was the alerts piece. But we did just do that. We upgraded because we had the old licenses, we had new licenses. And just to keep up to date with the latest software, we switched to server because that was pretty much the only option Tableau gave us. So they had another option, but it just was, you could keep very old software, so.
And Mr. Scott, there looks like there's a question for you on the chat line about Nielsen Data, and they wanted to know if you've done any CMA mapping or polygon mapping.
No, I have not. That is something I've looked at, and it can be quite complicated creating some of those custom polygon maps. what we have done as kind of a workaround, and it gave us what we needed, is there's a way to use an image of the Nielsen region map or a Walmart map or what have you as a background, and then plot your data over top of it. So we've got by with that. It's not something that's been requested, so I haven't had to really dig into it. And I know you have to use some external tools to create all of the little data points to build your polygon with. I've watched a few videos on it, but no, I haven't had to do it yet.
And then Fred, I'll jump in. So I assume CMA, is it the same as DMA, designated marketing area? It's similar. Like, is it like Dallas, Fort Worth, Denver,
Yes.
Colorado? Yeah.
It's,
So what you can actually do is you can actually ask your Nielsen or your IRI person. Our IRI person was able to give us the DMAs by zip code. So we actually have all of the zip codes that are included in there. And then it's super easy. You just link that into your data. And then you can create a custom group in Tableau just using that right click, create custom group, and then you're good to go. So that's been super helpful. We also link that to our data, and then I'll just do like max, or you could do an LOD calc, which I'm not as familiar with. So I get by with using just like max or, you know, min, because they're all the same for each zip code.
Yeah.
So that's been the easiest way.
Yeah, that works really well if you have all of the zip codes you need. But if you don't, then you have holes in your visualization of your map. So then you would really need to use the outside borders of your zip codes to create that true, you know, geographic object that.
I'm learning that our IRI guy is even better than better than we thought. He's giving us amazing zip code information.
It was a pain in the butt to build it out at first, but it's definitely come in handy just a few times.
Yeah, and that's been super helpful. Also looking at like brand indexes and then comparing versus nationally how we're doing. And then we're also able to map any of the IRI data regions. So we have even like all of we don't have retailers yet, but any of like the cities or states, we have all of that. So you can look at your like BDI, CDI, so brand development index versus the category development index, and see where it's a protect, invest, vulnerable market, etc. And that's been super helpful as well. And then we will be sharing the decks out to both our Facebook page as well as I'll have to see if I can share it out to that user group page. So you guys will have the links to everything. Any other comments, questions? Thanks for everyone for being flexible with us here in COVID times, meeting virtually. I know no one wanted another Zoom meeting. No one really wanted this, so I do appreciate you guys being here.
I expect to see some silly backgrounds next time.
My
the matrix behind us.
Yeah, I need to find that background.
We'll see if we can't get Tableau to sponsor who could have the best Tableau background.
That would be awesome.
With the data visualization.
Good thinking, Marty.
All right, cool. Well, I think we're just about at time. Anyone else? Any last comments? One more question? We call this the power of the pause. We've taken a course on it. So our boss is very good at it. He'll stay quiet for an uncomfortably long time, but it does encourage questions.
I'm all good. Thank you to both you and Scott for some great presentations. And I think a number of people have dropped off. So they'll be able to get that. And I had indicated that on the chat, as well as the Tableau diversity email that we got today. So there's another opportunity to engage with Tableau. So great.
Okay. Cool. And
Awesome.
thank you so much to Alyssa from Tableau for hosting us today on Zoom. So definitely appreciate that and appreciate the help sending that out invite to everyone. So our next meeting will be, I believe it's December 3rd. Is that right? It's always the first Thursday of the last month of each quarter. So I think it's December 3rd, if I'm correct. But just keep in touch looking at our subscriptions, so you'll be able to be notified. We'll send out reminders. So, all right. Thanks everyone for being here today. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
See you guys next time.
It was nice meeting everybody. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.